Served.
Hey, Terry Bradshaw on Fox Super 6 are giving away $5,000 for each day of the NFL draft this week. One of the day one contest questions is, when will the first defensive player be drafted? Brandon, what do you think?
I'm going to go to the Atlanta Falcons at 4. I know we talked about Kyle Pitts landing there and how they can't pass up there. But, man, you know, you got so much money invested on the offensive side. You're okay. You know, they're good enough. You need to go shore up that defensive side. So I see them making a move on the defensive side at 4. So I got to go there.
I'm on the exact opposite end of the spectrum. I think it's the Cowboys at 10, so I'll take 10 or later. I think the first 9 picks of this draft, we have 4 quarterbacks, 2 wide receivers, 2 offensive linemen, and Kyle Pitts. So there's your first 9. So I'm going to say 10 for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nick. It's got to be Cowboys at 10.
I think it's going to be
you can download the Fox
from Alabama, too. Sorry, Jenna, go ahead.
Could be. This can be fun. No, that's okay. We can still talk about it. Or I can tell you this. You can download the Fox Super 6 app. You can play for free for your shot to win. You can make sure, though, that you do tune in to NFL Network for round 1 tomorrow, 8 Eastern, to follow along live. How about we talk some NBA now? It was a rough night for the Golden State Warriors last night. They were hot, and Steph Curry was in the MVP conversation, and then they went out and got absolutely obliterated by the Mavs. What happened? They had that streak going. In fact, at one point last night, Dallas went on a 28-0 run. Say it, Nick. It ain't.
That ain't great. That ain't great, Jenna.
That ain't great.
It ain't great.
Here's Steve Kerr, who has the same sentiment as Nick does on last night's Dubs dud.
I'm not that concerned about a 9-minute scoring drought. I'm concerned about defense. I'm concerned about a level of intensity and preparation and competitiveness. That's what was missing. And I'm the head coach, so you know, I did not have them ready to play. Clearly, you know, biggest game of the year, and it was over before it started. So really disappointing. But we've got a young team. I think of the guys who are out there tonight, I think we only have 3 guys who've been in the playoffs. Tonight was kind of like a playoff game for Dallas. You know, they lost last night. They know we were right on their heels. They came out like it was a playoff game, and we came out like it was an exhibition game, and very disappointing. I thought we were beyond that, but obviously, you know, we took another one on the chin tonight. So, like I said, just really disappointing. I'm disappointed in myself for not having them better prepared. I'm disappointed in the way we just didn't meet the challenge as a group. It's a shame, but we've got 10 games left, and we've got a lot to play for, and we will be better prepared next game. I know that.
We got Chris Broussard joining us now. Chris Broussard, good morning to you. There was a lot there from Steve Kerr. What'd you make of what he had to say about where the Warriors were coming into last night's game?
Well, I agree with just about everything he said. The only thing I disagreed with him was when he said, we'll be better prepared for the next game. I can guarantee that. He can't guarantee that, because they should have been that prepared for this game. He obviously thought they would be going into it, and they weren't. So outside of that, he was right on the money. He was right to take blame on himself. Steph and Draymond, as the leaders of the team, deserve some blame as well, as do the young kids, of course, who were playing. Look, when you consider the context of this game and what was at stake, all right, you're trying to get the tiebreaker against a team you theoretically could battle for the 6th seed in Dallas. It's a team that's owned you for the last 2 seasons. It's a team that just is playing the second night of a back-to-back. You have your 3 best players, Steph, Draymond, and Andrew Wiggins. You're at home. When you consider all of that, it is worse. I forgot some stuff. You trailed by 43 at one point. You gave up a 28-0 run. You consider all of that,
yeah,
and it is worse than the 53-point loss to Toronto earlier in the season because Steph and Draymond didn't play in that game. So this was the worst loss of the season and at the worst time. So the only good things are these. One, they came out of that Toronto loss and went on a nice little run of wins. Their next 6 games are against teams with losing records, although Minnesota's all of a sudden playing good basketball. And finally, this will put to rest the notion that Steph, as a 9th or 10th seed, was going to win the MVP. So those are the only silver linings to this.
That's right. And listen, Steph was the only Warrior that showed up at all last night. Draymond Green, the greatest defender in the history of basketball, if you haven't heard that, ask him, didn't really do his part. I think he took 1 shot and was part of a defense that allowed 133 points to be scored. But here's the problem, Wilds. We have heard about teams that believe they can flip the switch, right? And that's usually like a team that's coasting in the regular season and in the playoffs going to flip the switch and become a championship caliber. The Warriors under Kerr have tried to have it both ways this year. And you brought it up before the show, so I don't want to step on what you're going to say, but it leads me to the bigger point, which is when Steve Kerr said back in February, we're not going to chase wins. And the end of that quote was, listen, we believe we can compete for championships in the years down the road. Well, when that is what you're telling your team 6 weeks into the season, that this year we're going to try to be good, we're going to try to make the playoffs, but since we can't win the title this year, how much does it really matter? It is hard 3 months later to convince your team this is a really big game. Because to me, the messaging from Golden State has been, for the last 2 years, there are no big games. Because we are a steak and lobster tail franchise, and right now we're being served some really good sandwich meat, and that's not. What's the point of that? What's the point? So everybody loves Kerr, but some of this is that he has made it clear that even though they have Steph and the greatest defensive player ever, and an all-time great 4th option, according to Chris Broussard and Andrew Wiggins, and the number 2 pick of the draft, Weissman, when he was healthy, we can't win the title. Steph Curry's the 15th greatest player ever, but we can't win the title, so what's the point? And so, yeah, it's hard in the stretch run for Wilds for guys to lock in, because what's the point? What's it matter? That's a problem.
So, Broussard, do you blame them? Because the corpse of the Warriors dynasty that we see out there that teams love to beat up on and love to take shots at and we've heard quotes through the year that it's like, they're getting us back for what we did to them. This is not the same Warriors. And I think Nick brings up a good point that if you've been to the top of the mountain, if you've won the championship, if you've been a dynasty, if you've won 70+ games, the idea of having the juice of fighting for the play-in game, like Draymond said, it's just not there. And I know Steve Kerr's like, it's my fault that I didn't have the guys up. Like, give me a break. The self-flagellation of Steve Kerr. Like, Steve Kerr, you don't play for the Bulls or the Spurs anymore. Your job, you don't put on a jersey, fire people up, make some shots while there's a 28-0 run. I don't think the core of this team, the mental makeup, the emotional makeup of this team is built for a rebuild. They're not Klay Thompson away. When Klay comes back, this team is not going to be a great team. They were great. I'm going to say, Broussard, you should probably think about breaking up the Warriors and everyone would be successful with another chapter rather than trying to recapture their old glory.
Well, look, I've said this about Steph. He's under contract for next season. Run it back. See how good you are when Klay gets back. If they're a 4th seed and go to the 2nd round of the playoffs and lose in a tough series to one of the LA teams or something, then you feel like, okay, we're a couple of tweaks, a couple of small additions away from really competing for a championship again. Steph can lock in and stay in. But if they end up being a 7th or 8th seed or in the play-in again and they lose in the 1st round, then I think Steph should look elsewhere. Now, I'm not buying that because you've won championships, you can't compete. I think Brandon could speak to this. Every night you go out there, you want to win. And you're just competitive by nature as a professional athlete. So I'm sure I do think Steph is like, look, let's get in the play-in and see what happens. Let's get in and